when they're now building the case for war in the media, they're essentially repeating the same thing. That is, the tens of thousands of civilians were slaughtered by the regime. We have to do something. This is, it's the usual humanitarian intervention argument being pushed. But the media has a role here because only today the foreign minister of Iran he tweeted out that Iran had it already released this list of all the victims during the insurrection, which amounted to 3,117. But that included, of course, all the officers and government officials who had been murdered. So if you're a journalist and your job is to inform the public, indeed, you look for what is true and of public interest. What you want to go and do then is go through this list, and then if there are names, in this tens of thousands which aren't on this list, okay, well, bring it forth, and then you can expose if this is not truthful. But if you just ignore what is happening on the other side because you fear that could undermine the narrative for selling a war to justify the war that's coming, you're not a journalist at all. You are a war propagandist. Again, this is the fact that no one is responding to this, that they're not investigating it. Indeed, that just is dismissal that, well, this is Iran. Everything they say is propaganda. There's no point to even take it because it's serious. It's it's not great for the journalistic practices. So let's choose the words in this way. Just the last question though. You said that Iran.
One point that I'd like to add here, and that is they do the exact opposite. The independent journalists that came to Iran for the February 11th celebrations of the 47th anniversary of the victory of the revolution, they saw massive protests or demonstrations in support of the Constitution. 4 million people came to the streets in Tehran alone, and there were tens of millions across the country. They came to see, because during after the deadly riots or the semi-coup attempt, the armed insurrection on January 8th and 9th, there were mass demonstrations across Iran against the rioters, and there were up to 3 million people in Tehran. And Musk and the West, they were saying this is AI. They showed helicopter footage of the crowd in Tehran, which was massive, and they were trying to pretend that this is AI. So on February the 11th, we saw independent journalists coming to Iran, and they went and saw the protests, and the people in Tehran came in even larger numbers, probably because they saw how Elon Musk and Western media were trying to downplay the real numbers. So the rally in Tehran and everywhere else was larger. And but those independent journalists, Western journalists who went back, they're now being attacked and smeared, and because they went to Iran and exposed how, in fact, people are not with these terrorists and with these, the Pahlavi and the MEK terror group and the separatists and all those people funded by Western intelligence agencies. And that people do not believe their fake numbers of, many thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. And yes, if they had any integrity, they would say, okay, let's see the names and compare them and see what other names we have. They won't do that because they don't have such names, and that's not the objective. Again, no one should be fooled. There's no difference between the BBC, the Guardian, the Times, or Breitbart and the New York Times. They're all one and the same. They're owned by the Epstein class, and they are there for propaganda purposes. These are the people who've been whitewashing the ongoing genocide in Gaza, the slaughter of Palestinians and Lebanese. Again, yesterday, the Israelis carried out horrific massacres across Lebanon, killing children, but that's not of interest to the Western media. So they have no credibility, and Iran is, I think Iran recognizes that the best way to deal with them is to direct their is to focus on the global majority and ordinary people in the West who are seeing the reality increasingly. And the Western media obviously does not have the influence that it had a couple of decades ago. It is deteriorated, it has declined very rapidly, and Gaza was a turning point. So Iran has lots of support across the world, and people across the world, many people across the world, don't believe the propaganda. And I think that as U.S. propaganda capabilities and Western propaganda capabilities decline, their military capabilities decline, their economic capabilities decline, it's going to get worse for them and more difficult. And if they carry out war with Iran, I think we will see a very rapid uh, collapse of the Western or U.S. empire, much more rapid than we were expecting.
Yeah, no, have quite a few problems over here myself for interviewing people like you, which I'm accused of assisting regime propaganda for Iran. So it's no the yeah it's no not well, you can smell the no well, the desperation there when one loses narrative control, and yeah, the what happens to free speech under those conditions. But the last question I had for you, though, was you mentioned before that Iran is just now waiting for the war to begin, which, well, it seems not to be unavoidable, but it seems that it's coming now. But at the same time, I'm also watching all these Chinese satellite pictures showing all the concentration of the American military hardware. And, it, when you mentioned that Iran's waiting, are there any discussions or considerations about preemptive strikes? Again, I just want to make it clear I'm not advocating anything. I'm very curious about the strategic thinking in Iran. That is, if this is, as you said, an existential threat, a war for survival, this unprecedented military hardware being lined up all around Iran. The capabilities are there, the intentions are clear, and there's a strategic benefit in striking first. Is this entering the strategic discourse in Iran? Again, is you can say it's better to be attacked first, so Iran doesn't get accused of an unprovoked attack on the U.S. But on the other hand, who strikes first can be quite critical. I'm just curious how if this is a discussion at all in Iran at the moment.
This is a key point, actually. Uh, Iran, based on its religion, especially in Shia Islam, it will not initiate war. Just like Iran never produced chemical weapons when the West was giving Saddam Hussein chemical weapons to use extensively against Iranians, according to uh, the religious views of the Iranian leadership, those chemical weapons are not moral, so they never produce them. The same was true with nuclear weapons. Iran could have had nuclear weapons many, many years ago. Iran has had that capability for a very long time, but it itself chose not to have them. Of course, the Iranians have also said that under if the fate of the nation is at stake, then they would change their nuclear posture. But in any case, uh, that is this is all based on their religious belief. But what we are seeing now is a situation where the Iranians are saying that we'll not wait to be hit first. As soon as we're sure that we're confident that an attack is happening, we'll strike. And that, of course, creates a enormous danger too, because if the United States could do something stupid and create misunderstanding and start a war through its stupidity. Because again, we're not for sure. It's not clear that the United States wants a war yet. We're assuming they do, but we don't know because the Zionists want the war. We're assuming that that will happen, but we don't really know. It could go either way. So the United States may carry out some sort of stupid provocation or send a, a large number of planes into the air, and then the Iranians will interpret that as the preparation for attack, and then the Iranians will strike. So Iran is not going to wait till the United States carries out its first wave and then respond. So Iran is not going to initiate war. It never has. It's always been, aggression has been carried out against Iran. We saw that when the West encouraged Saddam to invade and then assisted him with all sorts of weapons and funding, especially from these regimes in the Persian Gulf. They too were a part of it. And of course, the Germans were the ones who gave the chemical weapons, which I survived, but many didn't. Then there was the 12-Day War, the sanctions regime, which is a brutal regime. I mean, it's quite stunning, Glenn. It's quite stunning. As you and I are speaking, they are starving Cuba, but the Western media is not talking about it. They are starving kids in Cuba, women and kids, and imposing a siege. And even this, Trump alluded to this in his when he was lashing out um, at the Supreme Court. He alluded to what he's doing in countries like Cuba, but he was, I think, alluding to Cuba in particular. Quite a few admissions were made in that in a few during the last few hours about Jolani, about strangling countries, about all sorts of things. But the point is that as we speak, Western media is now focused on dehumanizing Iran and Iranians and trying to portray it as utterly evil to prepare the grounds for war. But their government is strangling the people of Cuba, 10 million people, and they won't even talk about it. So, uh, this is where we are right now. This is the world that we live in. It's a war. It's a world where the class, the Epstein class has exposed itself and it is now functioning out in the open. And Trump is the most important representative of the Epstein class. So it's really in the world today, it is the axis of resistance against the Epstein class, and I have no doubt that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the axis of resistance, whose sin is opposing genocide, whose sin is that they're the only ones, the only states, the only entities that are actively opposing genocide. They're saying, don't kill Palestinian kids. They're not Amalek. That's their sin. And I have no doubt that they will persevere.
Yeah, now for a class which has this collective identity and legitimizes all action based on humanitarianism, it is quite shocking that one can't even talk about Cuba, that it doesn't even appear in the media. But yeah, there we are. So, well, thank you for taking the time, and yes, please stay safe. This looks like it could be some very dangerous days ahead.
We do what we have to do, and I will do what I have to do, like everyone else. I will continue being with you and other colleagues as far as long as I can find an internet connection, and I'm not going to be intimidated. Come what may.